the grandfather paradox is that if you go back in time, you could kill your grandfather, and therefore the thing is impossible. So I realized someone in century 25 coming back to see the first time travel might stop in century 24 and kill their grandfather, and then that brings this whole paradox back and defeats the whole thing. And I was pretty unhappy about that because I liked it. But I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I think I have found not simply a solution to that small problem, but actually it led to the current answer, the state of the answer. And it goes like this. In order to understand it, I have to make a metaphor for you. And here is the metaphor. We live on a globe, a geometric sphere. And on this globe, there are extremely advanced civilizations. You could call them futuristic civilizations. Japan comes to mind, West Germany, Malibu, certain highly futuristic outposts of global culture. Yet on this same globe, there are what we would have to call ancient civilizations in the Amazon rainforests, in the mountains of Selangor in Malaysia, in the White Mountains of New Guinea, Stone Age people. Well, now, so we live on this globe. We have these super futuristic societies, and then we have these super old-style societies. I don't want to call them primitive, but old-style societies. Well, now ask yourself, which way are cultural values moving on the planet? Are the Japanese taking up headhunting and shamanic magic and hunting with poison arrows? No. But the people who hunt with poison arrows and practice shamanism are looking for transistor radios, high-speed outboards, moisture-resistant radios, and fine cosmetics. So the point is, if you have a situation where you have highly developed cultures and underdeveloped or unadvanced cultures, the flow of values will always be from the more advanced to the less advanced. Here's another way of understanding it. Think of think of the world as a closed sphere, and recall from your high school physics what is called Bernoulli's gas laws. If we have an empty cylinder that has a vacuum inside of it, and at one end of the cylinder we pump in a few cubic yards of oxygen, let us say, what will happen inside this sphere, this cylinder? Does anyone know and care to say? Well, what happens is pressure equalizes instantly throughout the entire system. The oxygen doesn't stay at one end and the vacuum at another. The thing seeks equilibrium instantly. And what I'm suggesting is that the global culture is seeking equilibrium of social values and technology so that it's all flowing toward the vacuum end of things, the less advanced end of things. Well, how does this impinge back on this question of 2012 and the time travel and all that? Well, here's the notion. It's a little hard to grok, but worth the effort. When the Lady Temponaut sailed off into the future, I was wrong to expect that time machines from all points in the future would arrive at the first moment when time travel was possible. The grandfather paradox mitigates against that. Instead, what would happen is that the most advanced state of human evolution achieved throughout all of the future would move backward through time and completely fill the cultural phase space that follows the moment of the invention of the first time machine. So that when you press the button and turn on the first time machine, it's like a God whistle. It summons, it isn't causal like that, but it causes to appear in your near neighborhood the most advanced state of human completion ever achieved in the history of the species. A way of thinking of this is to say that in a moment before or a moment after this compression point in 2012, what density of novelty going orthogonal to 3 space really means is that the entirety of the future, happens in a fraction of a millisecond. So that all the long ages of the future, millennia and millennia, empires won and lost along the Milky Way, religious ontologies rising and falling, transformation of the human form, machine-mind interface, extraterrestrial contact, fusion with the mind at the galactic center, all of that stuff happens in a nanosecond when the three-dimensional space-time matrix is collapsed, so that, strange as it may seem, primitive as we are, if a situation like this prevailed, we could save ourselves in that final culminating moment, because the most advanced future state of technology and human development has to be assumed to be inconceivable from our point of view. It's exactly like God Almighty. It's at least as powerful as our conception of God Almighty, because even our conception of God is probably flawed by our limitations. So, in other words, it is possible to imagine a situation where the condensing of this lower order dimensional slice of things, which we call human history, bursts through this hole, this compression point, into a hyperdimensional domain of human completion that took millions and millions of years to achieve, in a dimension we never experience, a dimension that our act of inventing the time machine compressed down into a nanosecond. Now, I know this sounds far-fetched, but recall how much is milked out of a nanosecond by orthodox science in discussing the first few minutes of the universe. I mean, somebody wrote a book called The First 3 Minutes, in which they said, 90% of what has ever happened in the first 3 minutes of the universe. That's when it attained its size, its X, its Y, its Z. Well, what I'm saying is that the completion of the universe, the culmination of history, all this stuff, happens in the last few seconds of the meltdown of three-dimensional space. And at the other side of that barrier lies what we are looking for, the cosmic mind, unlimited power, unlimited affection for mankind, unlimited understanding of how to extricate us from our situation without damaging the planet. Well, at that point, you can plug in any kind of apocalyptic scenario you want. I mean, they could lift every single human being on the planet off into another dimension, into a space-time vehicle that could rove through the geometric matrix of being, whatever. Imagination fails at this point. We can only point like the baboons in 2001 confronting the monolith. We can only scream and jump up and down in front of it with excitement. But what it spells is, return to the higher and hidden source from which we sense we descended into matter long, long ago. And notice that wild as that scenario is, it doesn't require divine intervention. It doesn't require the loving intercession of extraterrestrials. It's something that we call the oversoul of our species to us. From the very ends of space and time, it is summoned by a technological event that represents the union of skill and means. It's like the generation of Buddhist ontology, but it's something that we achieve through technology. So that's just one example, one scenario of what is this thing where the thing runs off the graph, and can we make a model of that without calling on such deus ex machina phenomena as flying saucers, God Almighty, and so forth. Yes, we can if we're willing to stretch our imagination toward the possibility that we are to be rescued by our great, 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 great grandchildren, and the understanding of space and time that they put in place in the millions of years of the future, that we compress then down into just a nanosecond squeal of high-density activity that then reflowers out into a universe